So going back to like boundaries, because when I talk to women who are single moms and I ask them like, they're just like, I don't know. I just, there was no boundary. It wasn't, it's like they feel like if they was to tell him no, we have to use protection all the time, then that's kind of not taking them to the next level of intimacy or whatever, um, being closer with that person. I would hear women say that. So it's just like a lot of women probably, or a guy. I remember hearing this back in college where guys basically would brag about shooting up the club, and I'm like, why is that a thing? Like, y'all know babies come from that? Like, what? Like, and so women don't like, okay, I'll say one of my friends got pregnant because her boyfriend did that. And she told him no, and he did it anyway. And she ended up getting pregnant from it. And she's just like, yeah, well, it is what it is. Like, and I'm like, where was the boundaries in that? Where was the boundaries? And I hear that so many times when women are not creating these boundaries within sex.
Can I say something real quick?
Mhm.
I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like we're not having the proper conversations with our children, because I feel like a lot of these conversations, like, they're very important, and maybe other races have these more serious talks, and sometimes um parents don't have these conversations with the kids, so you're just left doing what you're doing, having a good time, and you're left with the result of whatever happens, whether that's STD, pregnancy, whatever the case may be, and now you're dealing with it, and these are conversations that are not have had, like, even me personally, like, my mom growing up, my mom didn't really care to talk about sex. Like, she was just like, she was really kind of weird about it. But
Mhm.
my dad, he was open to teaching me and my sisters about what sex was and the proper like, what you, I mean, we were really taught to not have sex until marriage, but nevertheless, like, these are conversations that do need to be had, and if you're not having those conversations, what are people left to do? So that's just my 2 cents
No,
on
you're
it.
right. You're right. Because I think when I grew up in a very strict household, and we could not talk about sex. We couldn't look at sex. It's like, what sex? That doesn't exist. Like, that's nothing of your imagination you should even think about. I remember when I asked my grandmother, "What's a virgin?" She was like, "Where did you learn that? Where did you learn that?" Like, she was like mad at me, and I'm like, Disney. Like, Disney said she was still a virgin, and then, like, and she wouldn't even have the discussion with me on what that was. It was just
Exactly.
like, stay away from boys, they're bad.
Yeah.
Just focus on your schoolwork.
That was the
um
discussion.
yeah, like, well, it was like, don't focus, like, but like, they
But
didn't
when you,
talk about sex. They just, even when I was younger, I saw a 16-year-old pregnant, I go, oh, mama, the child is pregnant. Like, I didn't know children can have babies. And she, like, it was the first, I didn't know, like, you could be a child and have a child. And I said that to her. She goes, yeah, well, it happens. She, instead of explaining to me like how it happened, how to avoid that happening, that was never talked about. And I think a lot of young girls, they don't learn about sex until a hot boy is whispering in their ear and giving them attention
exactly,
about it.
and then you're learning it from, you're learning it all wrong.
You're
You're
learning it from the
it's
streets.
Yeah,
You know,
so
oh, go ahead.
there definitely needs to be more conversation that needs to be had, and parents need to make their children feel comfortable having these conversations, because regardless of whether it makes you feel uncomfortable, these things are going to come out one day anywhere. They're going to be learning in middle school, they're going to be trying something freaky with a little boy who's like, oh, do this, you know what I mean? And now you do have to have the conversation, because you got a
And I'm
phone
gonna go
call saying
after
that your
you.
daughter was doing XYZ in the locker room, you know? So yeah.
I wanted to, I think there, here again, I think that, men and women are very different. And that's no, and when it comes to sex, I think I still think the same thing. Women and men are different when it comes to sex. And so I think that it needs to be pushed that women should not be having sex with men who are not their husbands. I think that that is also an issue. Why buy the cow when you can get the milk free? So if you're giving him sex, imagine if every woman were to close their leg, these men will be married. And trust me when I say, okay, because they just cannot. They don't want to. And so I think that we need to start. I mean, I get it, the conversation being, oh, have safe sex or this, and this. But I think the conversation should be, hey, you should not be having sex. You should value your vagina, and you should not be having sex with a man who does not want to be responsible for you through marriage.
Is
If
that
he is not-
realistic though? In these
Absolutely. No.
times?
It's not realistic for
Tell
this
I was gonna
generation, but it is realistic. You know why? Because we don't get the same thing out of the stop front. You don't get the same satisfaction. What kind of satisfaction do you get out of a man sleeping with you and then leaving? Nothing.
Oh yeah.
You're not doing your part.
But how many women?
You're not winning.
How many women are actually going to practice that? I'm going to keep myself.
Well, you're gonna always have women who are those women. That has been the beginning of time.
But that's also influencing
we're talking about the wives. We're not talking about promiscuous, because those women, there's nothing
but
we
those
can do.
women are influencing the young girls. I remember in high school, it was not cool to be a virgin. Like literally, like I was scared to even say I was a virgin because another girl got made fun of. She was like made fun of. She wasn't invited to nothing. Like all the girls that were out there hot in their pants, they're like, yeah, we're not gonna invite her because she's such a virgin. Like she's so scary. Like we don't want to be around that. And so I was like, ooh, let me not tell her.